It doesn't matter how great and how shiny that car looks. If it doesn't run, it doesn't run. So I need uptime because uptime is business. And business means I'm supporting students, I'm supporting my partners, investors, everyone that deals with this university needs to get information and need to get it when they request it. And that means all systems need to be up as much as possible. And when they're not, is my vendor there to say, hey, we've got your back, we're looking into it, we're gonna fix it.
Welcome to Always On CXCX, the show for contact center and IT leaders. Between helping support your contact center reps, your customers, and the tech that makes the contact center function, you're relied upon quite a lot. You can't afford for your customer experience, employee experience, or stability of the contact center to falter. If you're ready to find the next strategy to keep your customer employee experience always on, let's get into this episode. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Today we have Keith Honaker, voice engineer and lead contact center architect from the University of Central Florida, where he's been for nearly 25 years. But let's jump into the conversation. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Josh. Good to be here.
Yeah, really glad to have you on the show. Really excited that you said yes and you were willing to come on. But I wanted to first jump into some of your background and what you've been doing at UCF. Can you share with us a little about UCF, your role, and what it's like overseeing a large contact center at the university?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've been here, like you said, almost 25 years. Year 2000, September, was when my hire date is. So long time. I've seen a lot change, obviously, over the past almost 25 years. So we've grown from a small university into one of the largest in the country. It's like 70,000 students, 13,000 employees, 4 major campuses. So over the whole Central Florida area. So it's been interesting. I've done a little bit everything here when it comes to the communication side. So even going all the way back to when I first started pulling wire. So, but I've always supported the phone systems here. So, but now, we moved into voice over IP and, Cisco, and then now we're into Teams, we're a whole team shop. That's when things really changed. And we've been doing that since right around COVID is when we went full Teams and the cloud. And then with that, we needed a contact center. And so I've been doing contact centers for a long time, of course, with all the different phone systems, but with Teams, it's definitely been different. So, it's been a lot of fun because we have so many different dynamics to, the university, and a lot of people don't understand that, but we almost view each department as almost a different company. So it's a very diverse set here.
Yeah. How have you seen the contact center change, really? I mean, you obviously are working within Teams, but have you ever worked with contact centers separately, like one that is kind of its standalone contact center versus one that that's now integrated with Microsoft Teams? Can you talk about that a little bit?
So, yeah, we've dealt with contact centers with Teams that were not fully integrated the way it is. I mean, today we're using Voca, but we used one that prior to Voca that, again, it's not integrated as Voca is. There were some challenges there. Anytime you're dealing with companies who try to integrate and may have third-party appliances and things of that nature, there's always additional challenges. And I think the biggest challenge really is when it comes into support. So when you're fully built into Azure, like Voca is, it absolutely makes a lot of the not just operational task easier, but the support.
So you mentioned that you view almost every different department kind of like its own company. How many contact center desks are there at UCF, and can you talk about the differences a little bit?
Sure. With Voca, we have provider mode, so that makes me more like a provider, and that's what we view ourselves. We view ourselves as a service provider to the university, even though we're a university department. But we kind of view ourselves more as also of a corporation, as that supports education, because again, we have around between 42 and 45 different call centers, contact centers. And I want to get away from that term call center. It's an old school term. We need to start saying contact center. So that's one of my goals this year, is to erase call center. It is a contact center, guys. But no, we have around 42 to 45. I've got a few more coming on over the next few months, but I see this also expanding out even more, just because everyone's really starting to understand the beauty of all the different integrations, as well as centralizing your communications through omnichannel, but also all the history, the statistics and everything else that goes along with the contact center. Again, we have athletics, we've got, our College of Medicine, we've got, hospitality, we've got our police department's not on it yet, but they're coming. They have their own currently right now. We're absolutely going to be using every part of VOCA to integrate with this campus. And our biggest number one right now focus is student success. And it's all of the student facing departments, how we can get them into the contact center and the information flowing to a centralized communication point.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. At what point do you see some of the departments coming on and saying, "Hey, I need contact center"? Is there kind of like this enlightenment moment that they're like, "I need contact center," or does it differ between departments?
It is very different. Of course, working at a university and other people in EDU will understand, and in the corporate world too, a lot of things are budget driven. So,
Yeah.
taking on, a new service comes with a charge. Nothing's for free. We know that. But once I generally do is I put together a proof of concept tailored to that department's needs, and I bring to them a whole proof of concept. I give them a demo, and I'm like, hey, here's how we can better your communications, not just for business reasons, but again, for the reasons to serve the community and the students. So a lot of times they'll see that and then they will basically say, hey, listen, you're right, and we need to jump on board. Or it's like, hey, Keith, we'd like to do that, but maybe in next year's budget. But it always comes down to, the proof of concept. And I think that really is, you can apply that to really any corporation in the country, is as long as there's a need there, and as long as contact center can kind of, satisfy that need and get business flowing, you can make a case for it for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Do some of the requirements look the same across departments? Like, say you talked about, the athletics department and hospitality. Would some of those requirements look the same, or does it kind of change based between the different departments and what specifically they need and maybe what they integrate with?
So there's definitely I would say an overall template when it comes to how information is flowing, because you want to get some of that down in a more uniform fashion for support reasons. But absolutely, because there are different departments, their needs and requirements are very different. For example, just call recording. Some departments want months and months of retention policy, whereas some departments are saying, hey, 30 days, delete it. We don't want, months of audio recordings. And you have, on this campus, we have a lot of CRMs. It's something we're going to address in the future, I think. But right now, I think the last count was around 27 different CRMs.
Oh, wow.
So you've got many different CRMs. And so, again, it goes back to needing a contact center like VOCA, where you have that API back end. We're saying it doesn't matter the CRM. We're going to build an API. We can pull data from that CRM, present it to the agent, and then that way they can better support, the person on the other side of that screen or phone, however you want to communicate. But there is different needs. So getting into just maybe, HIPAA needs or confidentiality, getting into, like your counseling department deals with, people's, mental health versus, full on, College of Medicine, we're dealing with a whole patient's history. So there's a different types of needs across this campus for sure.
Yeah. That's one thing I've learned, especially, since we've been working with you all. There's so many different departments. And so I didn't realize that an IT department like UCF takes care of everything from, I think at one point you even mentioned like the Domino's that's on campus. Is that true?
Yeah. So no, it's very true. So we did provide them with network and phone support. We have a lot of vendors on campus, and and it's because years ago when we started building our infrastructure, we didn't want providers to come in here and maybe do things the way they wanted to. We really have ran everything from literally in the ground to the top of our towers. We installed our own cell towers, and we allowed the providers to come on, and latch on to them. So that's really been the focus of our IT department, was to try to control the best of our ability, the quality of the work. So again, the network is stable, the services are great, we support them in-house. I think it's worked out for us. At times it seems like it's a little overwhelming, but for the most part, I think that our community can appreciate that, because again, support is key. to the quality of work you're putting out.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when you have such a large community. I mean, such a large university and the amount of students
Mm-hmm.
that are there and using all the different services that university provides. So let's jump into some of the challenges that you've noticed. You know, you have years and years
Mm-hmm.
of experience on this, and I'm sure plenty of challenges that you've come across. But what are some of the challenges you've found when moving to new technologies? Maybe
Uh,
if you could be specific
yeah.
about the contact center.
Right, right. It some of the bigger challenges, when it comes to contact center itself, it comes out to scheduling, timing. It's really just understanding each department has the specific needs. Some departments they have certain times a year where they're say, hey Keith, we can absolutely do this, and also have to plan that around, different contracts. So for years, we every 3 years we were looking at new products because we only typically sign 3-year contracts.
Mhm.
So, but at our size, after being in a product for 16, 18 months, I've already got to start planning if I'm going to stay on it or get off of it.
Oh,
So if you
wow.
understand that short amount of time, that's another challenge. Research and development. How much time do I have to really put into research and development of new products, features, and just overall call flow and data flow? It's not a lot, but we were able to do some amazing things, specifically with Voca, get a good contract extension, and so I can focus now on the research and development side. But some of the challenges, even just moving to Voca, was really just getting the agents in a place where we could develop our own documentation because we do that in house because we know how it works here. Getting all of the agents trained, getting your supervisors trained, but then also building the system on the back end to where the customers have access to their own contact center and can make a few minor adjustments or changes where they won't break it. It's really just getting everyone educated, and then like anybody else, we just all fear change or we don't like change because
Yeah.
we don't understand it all the times. It just looks different. So it's
Mhm.
getting people over that mental hump that, look, this is just different. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
But again, you got to understand you're not going to make everyone happy. So I think shooting for a good 80% to 85, I think that's a good target area.
Yeah.
But you just got to make it happen.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you mentioned scheduling, contracts, R&D, trying to understand at the 16 to 18 month mark if like, hey, is going to be a good solution for us long term, or are we going to have to start
Right.
looking for something new? You
Hmm.
talked about
Yep.
training a little bit. Can you dive into what does some of the training look like for agents and supervisors?
Right. So with Voca, I built 3 different training materials. I built one for the agents. Again, using Teams collaboration. We'll meet virtually. I found that that's the best way because again, in person, everyone's not in front of the
Yeah.
screen and they can't kind of follow along. So I'll create their credentials and their logins ahead of time. They'll follow along with me. I do have a PowerPoint. We go over the slides, but being that Voca is web-based, it's no applications, and it's a pretty simple interface. Agents have picked it up really, really quickly. On the supervisor side, there's 2 types of training. That's why it's broken down into 3, because some supervisors have access to the backend admin portal and some
Okay.
don't. But we go again, supervisors will go through the same training, but there's a couple of areas that they have different. The agents don't. Again, the team management part.
Mhm.
And then when it comes to the admin training, I built a whole document just specifically for that on what we would allow them to control. And it's really just screen sharing, a lot of, really a lot of Q&A, because I want my customers to really understand what they're looking at
Mhm.
and the importance of what they're changing and what they're not able to change. So again, getting everyone access, and really also, I think the bigger parts of that when it comes to training is retraining. Even
Mhm.
though some people are into the system often, they might forget a few things. It's not their job every day to be in and out of the admin portal. So retraining and also reconnecting with departments that may have hired a few people and didn't put them through the training process. So they're
Yeah.
kind of guessing their way through it, reaching out to those individuals as well.
Yeah. I love that. Phenomenal example. There's a question I wanted to ask around how has it helped you from overseeing all of the contact center, giving access to some supervisors to make
Mm,
small changes on their own. Maybe if you could answer, what are some of the small changes that you allow for them to
mhm,
do, and how has that helped you?
right. So up until Voca, no customer ever had access to the contact center. There was
Mhm.
no access management system, granular access that I could give. When it comes to Voca, I created two different levels of access, a supervisor and a manager. A supervisor can change things like their prompts when they're open and closed, but they can see everything, but they can only change a few areas like that. Like you can add a holiday in, prompts, and
Yeah.
hours. Managers, I give them kind of more full abilities to make changes to the queues, add and
Okay.
remove agents. I just don't want them to break call flows. So I don't let them go into flow designer. We don't let them go into areas where if they were to touch something or break call flow. I do have a couple of customers where I have them testing out full abilities because they're more tech savvy. But again, that's the beauty behind Voca is I can give that granular access per tenant, and it's not across all tenants. So it's definitely helped me. I would say on an average, it's around 25 to 30% of my time giving other people's access because you imagine
Wow.
42 to 45 call centers, constantly changing prompts, time of day. I mean, we're a campus, so we have football events, we have basketball events, and that we close sometimes earlier because of event or emergency disasters like a hurricane. Not
Yeah.
sure if you know, but in Florida we have hurricanes quite often during the summer and fall.
Yeah.
So again, making those on-the-go changes and not having to do all of them myself has helped me out tremendously. Also, with the GUI and the way it's built being so simplified for even those who aren't tech savvy, I actually built a Copilot bot through Microsoft and loaded the entire documentation inside the bot. And basically, it's called Voca Help. And about half of my users use that. And I basically built the topics to take them step by step on how to do anything. So you can just log in and say, hey, Copilot, how do I add an agent? And it will tell them, hey, first you need to submit a work order because there's information you need to get. But after that, it takes them step by step. I believe there's 17 steps. I add them to, contact as a worker, to each queue, all those different things. So that's helped out around a 10 to 15 additional percent at times because I have some customers that don't always remember. They're like, oh, I got the bot. Let me go ask your bot. And I'm trying to grow that as well this year for
Yeah.
sure.
That's awesome. A phenomenal
Mhm.
use of AI. Very cool. Very
And
cool. I didn't
fun.
know that. Yeah, that is fun.
Mhm.
And that definitely takes a lot of time off your plate too, which is really
Yep.
cool to
And
hear.
and time that we've been able to really pour back into the product and research, better features or changing call flow that's more efficient or
Yeah.
even getting rid of menus. And that's one thing that this year we're going to get rid of these old school DTMF menus. Got to get rid of them. It's something that I reached out to the Voca team a while ago. We need to get into all conversational. Get away from these DTF menus because sitting there listening to a minute and a half of just menu options is just killer. It's
Yeah.
really killer.
Yeah, we've had some people on the show who have specifically talked through like strategies of how to get
Hmm.
out of DTMF menus. I think one example was like there's like 37 options on a DTMF menu if you count like the main menu and the sub menus. And by the time,
Wow.
you get to 9 and then you're in the sub menu and there's another 9 options and you're like,
Hmm.
I don't even know where I am anymore. And you
Right.
just have
You can have endless. You can have redundant endless loops. Back when I won't call out the department because we got rid of it, but they used to have every option had 5 options, and the fifth option was to return to the previous menu. So you could just get lost in the contact center and be there for days. I mean, there was no timeout, there was no catch-all. It was just again, you could just keep looping through, infinitely. I mean, so yeah, but we need to get away from that.
yeah.
We need to utilize AI, utilize conversation piece to Voca, and really get our people to the endpoint as quickly as possible, as accurately as possible.
Yeah, and that's what the customer wants too. Like they want to come on there and get to where they need to go as quickly
Uh-huh,
as possible without
uh-huh,
having, push buttons or say a bunch of words and for it to be intuitive and get to the right person, get the problem solved quickly. So that's what we all
absolutely.
want. Yeah. All right, let's talk about requirements a little bit. So,
Mm.
what requirements do you look for in a contact center?
That's another good one because we have a lot. Because when it
Yeah,
comes to, I mean, well, it's funny is because the number one request from all of my departments are statistics. We need stats, Keith.
Mhm.
And what I like about that is recently, I would say recently, it was like towards the end of last year, Voca will now allow an export dump to a
Mhm.
database or storage unit so you can build your own. And
Yep.
that's just been great because departments have their own. I want to build this Power BI template to do X, Y, and Z. Great. Here you go. Here's the data. Do what you want. The other one has to be, and some of these are not going to be in the order that people really want them. And I understand because a lot of people say features, features, features. I've learned that you could have every feature you want turned on that does not make the experience better. It doesn't make the service better. What really counts is the architecture of the service itself. How is it built? Where is
Mhm.
it built? Things like that. Is there redundancy? Is there, where's the support at? You have a great product, but you can't support it. That hurts me because problems are going to happen. It's always not, there's no product that's perfect. Problems are
Yeah.
absolutely going to happen. But if you cannot get your vendor support, it doesn't matter how great and how shiny that car looks. If it doesn't run, it doesn't run. So I need uptime because uptime is business. And business means I'm supporting students, I'm supporting my partners, investors, everyone that deals with this university needs to get information and need to get it when they request it. And that
Hmm.
means all systems need to be up as much as possible. And when they're not, is my vendor there to say, hey, we've got your back, we're looking into it, we're going to fix it. And I really truly believe in AudioCodes when it comes to that because we've been a partner there for years. We have their voice routers on campus. We talk about SBCs, we got SBAs that we're going to be deploying soon. So again, we have their phones. So when it comes to overall core services, we really have poured a lot into the company because we see the value there. We got the support, and again, we really treat them like a partner, not so much as a customer, provider kind of relationship. So support is definitely a huge one. Integrations, that's huge. Everyone's got the standard features, but how are you integrating with the products that you interact with to give your agents and supervisors a single frame to look at? I
Hmm.
don't want agents having 15 different screens on their page, slowing down processing information, slowing down support.
Yep.
They need a single interface. So they're pulling from maybe different databases, but they got that single interface. So, integrations, support, how it's built architect wise. So things of this nature are very, very important to me. The features are going to come. They're always going to be there. That's always kind of like the oohs and ahs, the selling point. But I want to know really what's on the back end. What's going to keep my business up when a lot of others are down?
Hmm. Oh man, I love that. All right, I took a couple notes. So I got stats, and you correct me if I'm wrong here. So
Mm-hmm.
I got these are not in specific order.
All right.
Stats, reliable, providing uptime, the
Mm-hmm.
support is there, the integrations, and
Mm-hmm.
the architecture. What's under the hood?
Mm-hmm.
Did I hit on
Absolutely.
everything?
Yeah, that's really what I look at because again, like I was saying, the architecture is important because if you've got a bunch of different third-party appliances, there's just points of failure. So it's sometimes you could, maybe having that one-on-one relationship with your vendor may not be a one-on-one relationship. You might be understanding that they might be dealing with a vendor in the back end that's dealing with that appliance. So now you've really got two vendors working, on the
Mhm.
system. So again, it's how it's built and how is my information flowing from point A to Z.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. Very, very specific. So thank you. That will be helpful for anyone who's at their stage of trying to see what they need to focus on while they're evaluating contact center as well. All right. Next thing I wanted to get into was kind of looking into the future a little bit. What do you see as the future of unified communications and contact center? What's it look like for you?
It's funny you mentioned that word unified communications because our group today is called Unified Communications, but our AD is like, what, we're not. You know what we are? We're collaboration services.
Oh,
So
nice. Yeah.
that's another focus for 2025 is we want to kill that unified communications label. And, we're collaboration services
Mm,
because again, we are bringing it all together for collaboration, right?
mhm.
I would be foolish to not mention AI. AI absolutely has a place, and everyone's going to say that, but I'm going to say it for a different reason. I'm not looking for AI to perform all of the automation to, be in the place of a person. I want AI to be there when people can't. I
Mhm.
want it to be there to help our agents, I want it to be there to assist them in ways that they maybe not even know, but through technologies like Agent Assist, where they're monitoring the agent. It's like, oh, by the way, suggest this, or I see the conversations going this way. Let me give you some information about this, or maybe there's sentiment analysis to help them after the call. So we're better training our agents on, hey, how are you dealing with this person? Maybe you could change up your wording. You know, Again, with AI, it's kind of limitless as to where you can assist. Um, Also, it's going to give you more support. I've always dreamed of having a contact center 24/7, but in order to get that after hour service, you're typically outsourcing it, or you're working, three different shifts of people, and it's
Yeah.
not always very organized. So, how can we look at our after hour stats and maybe have AI step in and say, hey, let's do a little bit more AI on the back end for the after hours, because maybe it's just tier one support, or maybe it's just gathering information and processing it for the people to come in the morning, pick it up from there. But that's really my views on the future is, AI is absolutely going to grow in contact center. I mean, ChatGPT even recently came out with agents.
Yeah.
But, again, I'm not trying to go full on cyborg here. I mean, of course, it has its place. But again, with so many different departments and so many different needs, if we could just get AI to assist right now, that will help alleviate a lot of pain. I would say automation. What automation, and this is not AI, of course, AI can use automations, but how can my contact center automate tasks for, the callers, or, the texts coming in, the chats coming in, the emails coming in? How can I develop processes to automate that information to where it's easier for the agents, to where, supervisors and managers have that transparency of the data? That's another key thing that's going to be for us is I need to automate. And again, that helps the agents. For example, in the fall, we process around 4 to 5,000 calls per hour in the
Wow.
fall.
Wow.
On a slow day, we're processing 1,100 calls per hour. So, so what I'm looking at is I've got a campus here that is a small city, and we're pushing a lot of information through, everything, Teams, Voca, everything. But I need to automate things to help out my agents so that they're not overwhelmed. Also, so that management's not saying, hey, we got to go out and hire 40 people to answer phones for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's just not feasible out as well. So
Mm.
we absolutely need to make sure that we're using all the different technologies to help out where they can.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Very forward thinking. I love what you're talking on about AI, especially related to agents. That's some of,
Mm-hmm.
again, some of the advice I've heard on the show previously too. You don't want to jump right into the deep end
No,
with AI.
no,
That could go pretty
right.
bad.
Mm-hmm.
It could
I
be
do want
ugly.
to make it. I mean, I do want to help it with supervisors too. I mean,
Mhm.
let's say you forget to do something. Let's say you forget to open your call center or close your call center, or just things that need. How can I build AI agents to help out supervisors? Even maybe reminders or thresholds to alert them to different areas and things that they need that needs attention.
Mhm.
So again, bringing in AI to just be an assistant is going to be key this year, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Awesome advice. What is, let's touch on advice here a little bit more. What's one piece of advice you'd give to someone in your position at another university?
Well, I've thought about this a lot, and our voice architect, who's been doing, he's also a network architect, has been doing this for well over 30 years. One thing that he and I constantly discuss is people need to build contact centers for the customer's experience, not for the business experience, not for managers, not for supervisors, not to make it even easier on the agents. I know how that sounds after everything I just said, but how are the customers interacting with the contact center? Because every company out there, every university, every college needs to understand a lot of times your business success depends on those first few interactions with those agents. How did they reach the agents? How did they get to the information they needed? And if it's too cumbersome, if it's too difficult, it leaves a bad taste in people's mouths, and it's a bad experience, and it's a bad review you can get. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, like again, I went to that business. It was a great, it was okay, but the support was horrible. It was like, how was the agent? Well, the tech was fine, but I couldn't get to them, or I was on hold forever, or the information wasn't clear. Again, building your contact center for the customer's experience is going to help you out in the long run. For other advice I'd have is when you're out there deciding on a contact center, don't go to the expo. Don't just focus on that expo demo. They've got every bell and whistle turned on. They've got every license opened up. We all know it. You know it. So don't get too swept up into those, bells and whistles, because you may not be able to afford it. I mean, think about someone of our size where, we have hundreds of agents, we're handling thousands and thousands of calls. That stuff can get really, really expensive. So what's the basic function and what's the base price that I can get? If you start nickel and diming me, I can't do that. So it's really about what your needs are. Get that list first, what your needs are, and then bring in your wants. And then you can see, okay, I can afford this system, or do I really need that? And then, how is it built? What's the reliability? What's the support structure? What is the company's reputation that you're dealing with as well? Do they have a reputation of being really good in support, or is it kind of sketchy? So you've got to look at all those things. And I think a lot of us in the IT industry, we do look at that. But sometimes it's the decision makers that aren't looking at the entire spectrum. But that's where we need to voice up and say, listen, this is a great bells and whistles, but maybe the support structure is not there. And because of that, maybe the bells and whistles don't work. So having good leadership that listens to their SMEs typically produces the best product.
Yeah. Awesome. Great advice, Keith. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.
Yeah. If there are listeners out there, where do you go to, where have you been learning from recently? Sorry, maybe it's tied
Yeah.
to like a certain website, maybe a social media platform, a specific technical outlet that you go to, but where are some of the places you go for information to stay up on the industry?
Keep with the good questions, man, because this one kind of stumped me because, I'm looking at my browsing history and I'm like, a lot of times I'm out there just Googling, because there's a lot of things we're doing that's, I don't want to say, cutting edge. I hate that. But there are a lot of things that we're doing that a lot of people aren't. So getting the real support for that is difficult. So I try not to do too much in front of everyone, because you can get yourself in trouble. So when it comes to staying on top of what the industry is doing, lately what I've been doing though is just going to some of the conferences virtually, and then listening to some of the people speak, and you really get a good idea of kind of where the trends are going. But at the same time, I have to look at how that applies to us, and I don't want to waste too much time on research and development when I know that A, it can't happen here, or B, it's not a good fit. So I honestly don't look at a lot of EDU sources, because someone of our size, again, like I said at the beginning, we're more of a corporation that supports education, right? So especially UCF IT, because we have so many different customers and different types, from on campus to off campus. So I have to look at what best supports our corporate needs, and on all our different partners. And again, it's what the industry's doing, but what's worked in the industry, because there's a lot of leading technologies that you don't hear a lot about anymore. So it kind of comes in, it flashes, and it goes away. You're like, hey, what happened to that? Well, that's because maybe some people listened to that, but it didn't fully develop. So that's why I say I read up on things, and I'll hear something, and I'll Google something, and I'll get into it. Obviously you go to all your big tech companies like, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. But at the end of the day, I want to get down to what is company X doing to support their needs. And then it'll be a great set of ideas. And then I really will collaborate with our partners, AudioCodes, Microsoft. I'll reach out to them and say, hey, what are you hearing? Because this is an area I'd like to improve upon. And really, it's the collaboration of all of the different SMEs, getting back to SMEs, to focus my attention on where I do need to do research.
Yeah. Listening to the experts, reaching out to people and trust, kind of that word of mouth.
Really, it really is a small community. It's smaller than people think. I mean, it's and of course they see all these, different companies and all these corporations, but when you get into the IT community, it really is a tight niche of people.
Yeah. I like what you mentioned, also attending events virtually.
Mhm.
Like you said, sometimes you can walk up to the booth, you'll get kind of lost in everything that they're handing to you for free, or their
Oh yeah.
giveaways, or the just shiny, perfect demo that they have set up, knowing that everything is going to work right there at
Hmm.
that moment, because that's kind of the time they need it to work. And also just going about it virtually, you're not going to be pitched
Hmm.
the whole time. You can just kind of go
Right.
and listen to some of the keynotes and get the main ideas,
Hmm.
and have a lunch break, or go back home at night.
Right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it really is. It's listening. I mean, I love hearing big tech talk because, they've got a lot of grand ideas and you've got, people with big brains out there. Come on, they're extremely
Mhm.
intelligent people out there, but it doesn't always correlate to your business, right?
Mhm.
Because, I don't have the millions and billions of dollars that, Microsoft or Google or, Corporation X has, but I've got to kind of stay in my lane, so I want to know how I can improve what I've got at minimal impact on my budget. I've always got to be budget friendly here. Again, because again, we're a public university. We got to stay within our lane when it comes to the monies.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also what you said about, you're not always only focused on what's going on in the EDU space as well. You're looking
Right,
outside of that too. Um,
right,
there's a larger industry where things can correlate really well between what's
hmm,
just going on corporate wise versus what's happening in the higher education space too. So
right.
yeah, very
Absolutely,
smart.
because those companies are here. They're indirectly interacting with our students. So,
Hmm.
how are they functioning? Are they, if they're on campus, they need to be functioning just as well as any other department would. So, again, making everything work for the community is where you should be focused on.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Keith, this was a great conversation. You shared a ton of advice. I think there's a lot in here for others who are in your position at other universities as well that I think they can take away from. So,
Yeah,
thank you so much for coming on the show.
I appreciate it. And just a message to anyone out there, hey, reach out to us. We're always open to discuss technology anytime.
Awesome. I love it. Alrighty. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode of Always on CXCX. If you learned one thing from this episode, we'd appreciate if you'd subscribe and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. If you're using Microsoft Teams and are looking to integrate a contact center, consider trying Voca for free for 30 days. Voca is built on Microsoft Azure, meaning your customer interactions start, stay, and end with the same reliability and 5.9 uptime as Microsoft Teams. Just Google AudioCodes Voca or find the link in the show notes. Thank you again for tuning into this episode of Always on CXCX. We'll see you in the next one.